if we can, I believe he wants this 1 year continuing resolution so that he can do whatever he wants.
All right, we are one step closer to a government shutdown, and Democrats might find themselves in the worst political situation we have seen in American history surrounding government shutdowns. So in this video, we are going over all of the most recent meltdowns surrounding that. Oh, and by the way, Canada's new leader, he's throwing a little bit of threats towards the United States, so we will go over that as well. And we will go over some meltdowns surrounding the war in Ukraine. Now, before we start this video, please like the video. It's the #1 way you can help this channel, and it helps others see the videos as well. Let us begin.
Then we need to thwart him in moving forward on this and not allow him to take over the power of the purse and direct spending.
Okay, so I thought Democrats were already in a bad position. You see, Democrats are fighting for the federal workers, but if they don't vote for this spending bill, you can see how taking away money from those federal workers actually contradicts Democrats, but it gets even worse for them.
In Washington, it has never happened before, never, that a government was shut down over a clean government funding bill. It's never happened before. Anytime a clean government funding bill has been on the table, government has been funded.
Here's the problem. A clean spending bill is the exact same funding and budget the US government needs to continue operations until September 30th, which means Democrats have no reason to vote against this spending bill if they already approved it previously, and this will be a historic first in American history. This will look really bad for Democrats.
We are going to continue to participate in all the protests. I was at my 11th protest yesterday at the NIH, and I was at the science rally. And we're going to continue to use every lever that we have in Congress in order to stop this chaos and this assault on the rights of the people.
Now, we've talked about this before, but even some Democrats are very against the protesting and the rallies that are being held because of clips like this.
We're joined together by this noble dream.
Sorry, I can't play the audio on that one, but without the music, I think it looks even better.
Nobody asked for that.
This is weak. This is not the way we should be responding. This does not give the country any confidence.
Now look, you can leave your comments down below how you feel about all of this. I am just trying to show you guys the full picture and how Democrats are protesting and trying to stop anything Republicans want to push within the United States government. However, it does look like Democrat leadership is okay with this.
Do you think it went over well? Because on the right, they're saying, you know, it looked too synchronized. All the
in this world where people are competing for attention, it got attention and got many more views, especially because people on the right kept elevating our content, which I appreciate. Thank you.
Okay, you can leave your comments and opinions down below how you feel about that response, but I don't know if the saying bad press is good press applies here, especially when you have a lot of Democrats in the media even saying, you guys have to stop, this is not helping anything.
The Democrats don't have a vision for this country, don't have a vision for the future. They've become totally radicalized, and all they have to offer is unthinking, unfeeling, angry, senseless opposition, as evidenced by their shameful conduct that has now been much discussed around the world at the State of the Union, where all they could do was oppose every single proposal that President Trump had.
Why so many people are so mad about it? Because they're just taking opportunity away from kids that don't have it. So billionaires, kids of billionaires, they have it. They go to private schools. Everyone else, 90%, go to public schools. Don't take away their opportunity.
So let's stay on the facts.
Sorry,
no,
I'm
do
really
not
angry about this.
No, because this
I'm
is what
really
people
angry.
need to hear.
I taught kids in Clara Barton High School in Brooklyn, New York.
Now look, I am trying to be honest with you guys and show you the full picture on what Democrat talking points are as far as this spending bill. However, they are very generic and not specific. Here's what I mean.
Money to Zamunda for, research on squirrels, and you're like, no way this can be true. That's a lot of the talk in my district.
Is it popular to cut health care for the 40% of kids in this country who rely on Medicaid to pay for tax cuts for people who don't need tax cuts? Yeah. That's not going to be popular.
You know well.
So let me just bring Brenda right in. That is what congressional Republicans are doing. Yeah. DOGE is a misdirection tactic. The focus of effort is that they're going to take $880 billion out of health care that seniors rely on for at-home care, that kids rely on for primary care, and they're going to use it to give the 1% massive tax cuts.
You can leave your comments and opinions down below how you feel about these talking points, but it's very hard to find a specific talking point in which a Democrat wants to work with a Republican instead of just saying, you're going to take away Medicaid, you're going to give tax cuts to the billionaires. A lot of the talking points are things like that, very generic.
It's too easy to have fun with this, but Michael, this is scary. He tried to overthrow an American election 4 years ago. I have no doubt that he could try to stop the midterm elections. If he's physically able, he may try to run again in 28. This is really scary.
It is scary.
So like I said before, a lot of these arguments are either just generic or speculation. If I had more detailed arguments that we could talk about and have an honest conversation about, I would play that for you guys in a heartbeat. And by the way, here's what Donald Trump did have to say about the Medicaid and Medicare.
I'm not going to touch Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. No, we're going to get fraud out of there. You know, you see where I talk about it all the time. We have people 250 years old and all, you know, tremendous fraud. But that has nothing to do with that. We're going to get the fraud out, and everybody wants us to get the fraud out, and therefore you'll make it better. But we're going to have tremendous growth.
Okay, so let's move on to Canada. Like I said before, they have a new leader, a new prime minister, and he had some things to say about the United States that I think you would find a little interesting.
My government will put into action our plan to build a stronger economy, to create new trading relationships with reliable trading partners. There's someone who's trying to weaken our economy. Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, as we know, has put, as the Prime Minister just said, unjustified tariffs on what we build, on what we sell, on how we make a living. And my government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect, and until they can join us in making credible and reliable commitments to free and fair trade.
Okay, so here's where things get interesting, and here's why Canada is saying this is completely unjustifiable. Now, you can actually go to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and you can type in your own data that you want to look up. So I put in Northern Border, and I even put in specifically fentanyl, and it's true. It is a very low amount. For 2024, 43 pounds was captured. For 2025, we are up to 10 pounds. However, when you look at the total majorities, you can see we're already up to 3.2 thousand in total of illegal substance, and in 2024 we're up to 11.6 thousand pounds. But to Canada's point, even though these are high weights as far as the amount of illegal substances, the smallest amount comes from fentanyl.
The fentanyl coming over the Canadian border last year totaled 43 pounds total. That's a whole different thing than what's going on at the southern border. We know how to manage our border. We know how to provide security for our border. We've been doing it, you know, seamlessly for years.
Now look, I know we will never have a perfect system. If we did, that would be amazing, but I've never seen anyone advocate or downplay how dangerous fentanyl can be, especially in small amounts.
I think multiple things can be true. Number one, I do think it's about immigration and fentanyl. The president's been clear about that from the beginning and has never wavered from it. Number two, he does like tariffs for economic reasons, and I would just say to Canada, you know, we mean more to them than they mean to us. We're a much larger part of their economy than they are ours.
Between our two countries, less than 1% of the fentanyl that is seized in the United States is coming from Canada. But every ounce can kill families and people. So we're taking it very seriously.
But you are indulging the premise that that is the actual motivation for the tariffs rather than leverage for a free trade deal or just because President Trump believes in them?
Well, I think that this set of tariffs, the 25 and 10% set of tariffs, we have been told repeatedly that it is about fentanyl and security at the border.
And just so you are aware, that was Canada's ambassador to the United States. And to me, you sort of still get that tone of, well, it's not that big of a deal because it's a very low amount. Again, you can go to the website yourself. It's U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and you can go look up the stats. You can plug and play. You can look at all the details. I will say, fentanyl, yes, it's a lower amount than the other illegal substances. I don't know the math. I'm sure one of you guys can do it. But I think statistically speaking, why Donald Trump is so upset, the small amount still equates to a lot of Americans getting hurt, even though it's a small amount, and that is why the United States is putting tariffs on Canada.
Donald Trump is not standing up for Ukraine. What do you say to the person who says, well, I don't care about Ukraine. I want Donald Trump to stand up for America. What do you say to them?
I don't know where you got that. I mean, I don't have time for it.
Yes, but we hear it. We hear it.
Here's the thing. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in a place where you thought the Russians were the good guys? What part of America did you grow up in where they taught you the Russians were the good guys and our allies were the bad guys? That's the flip here that we need to continue to remind people. The Russians are the bad guys. They're raping women. They're killing children. They're bombing cities. The Ukrainians are the noble good guys. In some ways, they're more American than we are over the last couple of years. And we must stand with them in the same way we stood with the allies in World War II and since this country was founded. This is not just about Ukraine. This is about the core and the integrity of American values. And that's what he's also betraying. Not just Ukraine. He's betraying America.
The person who's watching, who just...
All right, so as I make this video, governments are making preparations for Ukraine to go into Saudi Arabia and figure out some sort of peace plan or peace deal or get one step closer to ending the war in Ukraine.
That's the flip here that we need to continue to remind people. The Russians are the bad guys. They're women, they're children, they're bombing cities. The Ukrainians are the noble good guys. In some ways, they're more American than we are over the last couple of years. And we must stand with them in the same way we stood with the allies in World War II and since this country was founded. This is not just about Ukraine. This is about the core and the integrity of American values. And that's what he's also betraying. Not just Ukraine.
Okay, so here's where things get interesting. And this is why Donald Trump, I think, has been battling with this specific point as far as the war in Ukraine. The majority of Americans do not trust Russia, especially their leadership. And the majority of Americans do support Ukraine as far as using our equipment to defeat Russia.
But when it comes to Russia, Americans don't trust Russia as far as they can throw them. I mean, my goodness gracious, favorable view of Russia. You go back to 2020, Kate, it's 28%. 2022 dropped to 15%. In 2024, just 8% of Americans hold a favorable view of Russia. To put this in context, about as many Americans believe that we faked the moon landing as have a favorable view of Russia. About how Americans' views of Ukraine have softened, the favorable views, and here we're talking about negative views of Russia. I think this kind of puts in a context about how Americans feel about Russia when matched up against Ukraine. Ukraine using U.S. weapons in Russia. Take a look here. 52% of Americans support that idea compared to just 43% who oppose. Even Republicans are split on this question, basically 50-50.
Now, another thing to keep in mind, a lot of Americans are pretty divided in how that initial meeting went with Zelensky, Donald Trump, and J.D. Vance as far as trying to get a deal done, how, the interaction went. However, I do have an updated clip. This is the most recent clip I have of Donald Trump speaking about this particular conflict.
Look, we have to have peace. And I'm doing this. Money is one thing. We're going to lose. We spent $350 billion on this. But the big thing, human life. Thousands of people this week, thousands of young soldiers died this week. Hundreds of people died in cities in Ukraine. And we got to get it stopped. It would have never happened if I was president, and it didn't happen. I think we're going to have a good time. I think we're going to have a good result in Saudi Arabia, meaning they're hosting the various talks. And we have a lot of good people going out there, and I think Ukraine's going to do well, and I think Russia's going to do well. I think some very big things could happen this week. I hope so.
Now, I have to show you this clip because I don't think it's being played on the mainstream media, but there is a clip floating around of J.D. Vance interacting with pro-Ukrainian protesters.
You're selling him out. Selling him out. Selling him out. Absolutely.
I respect them. I disagree. I think what we're doing is we're actually forcing a diplomatic settlement. If you talk to Joe Biden,
nobody in Ukraine benefits. No one. What about the revolutionary war? Do you think Russia can be diplomatic?
There are rules about the United States.
Have you been proved to test the ally?
And this is about a separate.
Now, that clip does go on for a while, but one thing I want to point out, in the clip, they asked J.D. Vance, do you consider Ukraine an ally? And that is one of the biggest talking points as far as being anti-Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and their policies towards Ukraine.
And this city voted for Donald Trump in 2024, first time in 100 years. The most resonant theme of the day that I heard from these Americans was how livid they are about the way that President Trump behaved in the Oval Office with Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky flew to Washington, but he walked into the Kremlin. And the propaganda that they heard from the commander-in-chief made Americans feel less safe and made them feel ashamed. This is an opportunity for congressional Republicans to distance themselves from this abomination and to demonstrate that Americans are going to stand for freedom and democracy. Because with all due respect, people do win wars. The United States won World War II. It made this world safe for freedom and democracy. We are now making it less safe for freedom and democracy by giving Russia all the cards that Donald Trump claims they have.
And look, I'm just trying to give you guys the talking points and the full picture as to how even a lot of conservatives feel as far as Donald Trump treating Ukraine. Now, I want to show you this statistic because I think it'll really pick your brain and I think you'll find it very interesting.
Americans on the Russia-Ukraine war want a quicker end of the war, but Russia keeps its captured land. Look at this, 50%, bare majority coming in here, support Ukraine's right to fight, even if it means a longer war. That's at 48. This is very, very close. But the trend line on this question is so important because that want a quick end of the war, look at this. You go back to August of 2022, it was at 31%. Now we're at 50%. I mean, that is a rocket ship upwards in terms of the Americans who want a quick end to the war.
Look, I always say this on this channel. Donald Trump is really good at knowing the polls and statistics, and he knows a slight majority want this war to end. However, the vast majority of Republicans really want this war to end as well. I think it's upwards in about 70%. I've talked about this before in a previous video. So anyways, we'll see what happens. We'll see if we have peace, or we will see if, anything could happen at this point. So, if you are still watching this video, thank you so much for all your support. This is a continuous operation. We are reporting 24/7, so I really thank you for the awesome comments and you guys liking the video. Thank you so much for everything, and God bless.